Thank you, Dr. Gould. And for me and for us, it's an honor to present the speaker this afternoon, Kent Sutcliffe. Kent is a USDA-NRCS soil scientist in the Utah-based Soil Climate Analysis Network office. He's originally from rural New Hampshire, and he studied soil science at University of Maine. Kent continued his studies at Utah State University, where he focused on the pedology and redox dynamics of saline hydric soils in central Utah. His professional career began as a soil mapper in Utah, where he quickly became the lead for the soil survey of Grand Staircase Galante National Monument and other parts of southern Utah. After about 12 years of soil survey work, Ken moved to the snow survey program, thinking digging was not to be or was going to be easier. As a snow survey soil scientist, he was responsible for 34 soil climate analysis network sites in Utah and shared responsibility for soil sensors at about 220 snow telemetry sites in Utah, Nevada, and California. Kent is currently the national coordinator of the 213 site of the Soil and Climate Analysis Network, including the sites we have in the Caribbean area. Beyond tackling ongoing program challenges, he's working to advance the use of soil and climate data in drought assessment, in land management decisions, and in support of NRCS Farm Bill programs. Kent's primary professional interest is in the quantitative integration of soil and climate data into stream flow forecasting to improve forecast skills. In his free time, Kent enjoys camping, biking, skiing, and hiking, and without a shovel and field kit. Without further ado, I'll let you with Ken. Ken, take it over.
Great, thanks. Let me get my screen shared. Okay. Can everybody see that and hear me?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Manuel. That was great. So I'm here to talk about the Soil Climate Analysis Network with a focus on the Caribbean area, located in Salt Lake City, as was mentioned. I'm actually the West Region Coordinator, but for all intents and purposes, I'm the National Coordinator, including, as you mentioned, the 8 sites I'm going to highlight during this presentation in the Caribbean area. So I'll go ahead and get started if there aren't any questions. Okay, so SCAN, we already used an acronym and didn't define it well, but it stands for the Soil Climate Analysis Network. And it was started with a pilot project in 1991 as the Soil Moisture, Soil Temperature Pilot Project. It included folks from both what's now our Water and Climate Center in Portland and the Soil Survey Division in Lincoln. And the idea was, with these 25 pilot sites, was to bring the telemetry technology, so the transmission technology that SNOTEL, or the Snow Telemetry Program that the Water and Climate Center manages, take that technology closer to the farm and utilize our vast soils expertise. So it would be like a farm or near farm weather station that's different than a normal weather station, and I'll explain that a little bit more here in a second. The early SCAN sites, that pilot project of 25, they were patterned heavily after the SNOTEL program that's in the mountains of the West, and it was a big success. We had a small staff at that time, as is the case now, even more so, and I'll mention that again. But the the scan sites were managed and relied heavily on local soil staff, state soil scientists, and what are now considered MLRA soil staff. And that the collaboration between the local folks and the national folks and NWCC and the Soil Survey Division really yielded fruit initially. There were lots of cases, one highlighted here, where data drove changes to soil climate models. So a lot of long-standing assumptions were either confirmed or sometimes contradicted by having these sites in. The thing that sets SCAN apart, and I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides, is that not only was it a weather station with below ground sensors, but at every site, we meaning NRCS, did a full soil description and took samples. So we knew what we were measuring below the ground. It's hard to explain how different and new this was in this world, in the natural resource world in 1991. It was very important it's very important to have the soil classification, texture, and chemical property data in order to interpret what the plants see in terms of the water content, and understand how well soil sensors are going to work and why. So SCAN was really ahead of its time in a lot of ways by including the important contextual data of the soil's information with the site itself. So this is a typical layout. And again, the so what with SCAN is that it combined your typical weather data with the below ground climate information, soil moisture and soil temperature specifically. So because it's a national network, we have soil sensors at standard depths, and those depths are 2, 4, 8, 20, and 40 inches. Just shown here for representation. This is an aerosol in Utah, certainly not something like what you'd see or we saw last summer in Puerto Rico. The sensors themselves include the 5 soil sensors below ground, reporting hourly data on soil temperature and soil moisture, but also hourly data from a wind sensor, so wind speed, direction, and max wind gust. Rain gauge, so a gauge that measures the liquid precipitation very precisely. Downside to that sensor is that it doesn't measure snow, which isn't an issue for you folks. So we also have a radiometer or a pyranometer that measures incoming solar radiation, and a air temperature and relative humidity sensor. Shown here is the thermistor. Those are high precision in a nice radiation shield, so that they're very, very accurate. And again, all these data are available hourly. So in the weather nerd world, this is considered near real time. The hourly time step, I mean. So the bottom line was SCAN, and it was a little bit ahead of its time, and I'll touch on that in a second here. But you get the data from above and below ground. So the idea was you had enough data from the sensors themselves to model evapotranspiration, and you could confirm what you calculated by looking at the water movement through the profile. Pretty innovative and almost ahead of its time in 1991. So because of its popularity, the SCAN network grew from 1991, those initial 25 sites, to many sites. We have right now about 213 sites across the country, and we have, of course, the 8 we're going to talk about today. We have sites in Hawaii and a few in Alaska as well. The downside here is that the network grew steadily during those intervening years, but the staff support hasn't. And so I'm going to be doing a little bit of apologizing on behalf of the agency because the value scan hasn't been realized as fully as it could have because of the lack of support. But anyway, we stand at 213 sites. All the sites, all 213 have soil sensors. Almost all of them, with very few exceptions where there's a bedrock restriction, have, 5 at those depths I mentioned. And so that comes out to over 1,000 in situ soil sensors across the nation. Pretty unbelievable resource. Okay, so you're probably wondering at this point, well, what are these data used for? It sounds neat. It certainly is exciting if you're into soils to think about the opportunities here. But the data are used in a lot of different ways, and that's one of the downsides to scan data is our users are broad but not as intense. So we don't have, for instance, the political support maybe that the SNOTEL program gets from the Western Governors Association here. But we have a lot of users, both public and private. We are a big feeder network into the drought monitor. So both the precipitation and the soil moisture data are fed in automatically into the drought monitor for that weekly drought assessment. We really have tried to push SCAN as an on-farm or farm adjacent conservation decision support tool, and we have an agreement with Cornell University for a website that turns our data into really useful information in ways that we can't. We're not great. We have very limited capacity in terms of developing websites that create interesting tools and so forth. But universities don't have those limitations. So we worked with Cornell on that. We'll touch on that later. But in Utah, where I'm based here, we've used scan data to help with rangeland seeding planning. Certainly, if the data are used in irrigation timing, both the amount and when it's appropriate to start turning the center pivot. All data are used, but specifically, of course, soil moisture. The solar radiation is important in that calculation to allow the calculation of evapotranspiration. And we cooperate with a bunch of different similar type state mesonet type networks, including the Ag Weather Net, spearheaded by Washington State University. And finally, harvest timing is a big one here in Utah. The relative humidity data are used commonly around the state to time the baling of alfalfa, essentially, to maximize protein content. So those are just a few examples along the farm management lines of how the data are used. Of course, as a soil scientist, I'm really interested in ecological sites and soil ecological site relationships, and those, of course, are reliant heavily on that microclimate or the climate that those two enjoy and are characterized by. So these are bar charts and pie charts of the timing of precipitation at a site here in Utah, trying to make sure that our soil veg climate relationships and models are appropriate. So there's some interesting data that pop out when you start to do the analysis on all the numbers we get. And finally, and the hardest to quantify are the users of data who scrape the data, so they pull from our servers without us knowing. That's a huge component in a huge way that scan data are consumed. But we feed into a bunch of mesonets across the state, across the country, state mesonets. We help in validation for the NASA SMAP and SMOS satellite validation. So it doesn't matter, but those are satellite efforts to identify and quantify soil moisture. So we're a validation network for them. Really too many to mention, and many I don't know about because there's no way for me to know unless somebody asks me a question. And I guess lastly, we are one of the largest contributors. We being SCAN is one of the largest contributors to the National Coordinated Soil Moisture Monitoring Network, and in that role, we play a disproportionate role in data delivery and so forth. We also have some of the longest periods of record, and we'll talk about that relative to the sites in Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, because of the sparse support in the past, data record is a little spotty at some sites, and that's hampered our ability to create those below ground climatologies or references of normal that would be my goal if I ruled the world. Okay, let's shift gears now and talk more about the sites in your neck of the woods, as we'd say in New Hampshire. There are 8 active sites in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. We did a big trip last year and got several sites that were not down. We're not reporting up and running. And I'll talk more about our future plans here in a second. But we changed telemetry types to a dual telemetry option, which means if one fails, the other should pick up the transmissions. So the goal here is to make as robust a network as we can. And it's no more true or important than in the Caribbean, certainly, because of the remoteness and the weather and the impact with that extreme weather has. Okay, I'm going to walk through these quickly and just talk about, so Isabella's up in the northwest corner of Puerto Rico. It was installed in 2003. So some of these have an extensive history. I wish the data record were more complete. Unfortunately, it's a little bit hit or miss. But moving forward, hopefully we can improve that. But 2003 is a long period of record for a site with below ground sensors. It's very, very unusually long. Okay, moving south, Mayaguez TARS is near the NRCS office there. That is a newer site, although not much newer. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is an old picture. It was moved recently, so we need to update this information on the website, but it is active and running. Maracao is one of the higher elevation sites up in the forest. It dates back to 2001. Further south is Combate, 2002. So these are all pretty old sites. Another higher elevation forested site is Guiarte Forest, 2001. Further north, closer to San Juan, is Corzal, 2012. So this is a newer site. I personally and my staff member, one of my staff members, and somebody from the National Water and Climate Center coordinated with and worked on these sites just last summer. Talk about that in a second here. And Fortuna is further south. So this is, in some ag land. It's near the coast, obviously. Fortuna was installed in 2006. We had some telemetry issues after our visit last year at Fortuna, but the data logger was collecting data. So we've pulled the data out of memory and put those onto the server. So although it looked like there was a gap maybe in the data record. We've been able to fill that. And finally, Upper Bethlehem in the Virgin Islands. That is an older site as well, 2006. Okay, so you're probably, let me talk about support here for a second, and then we'll go into where you can get the data, and then finish off with some future plans. So I mentioned last year, I visited personally. I didn't go to Virgin Islands, but we went all over Puerto Rico. We worked with Sammy in the Mayas office and a couple other folks. He's been very helpful in providing the footwork and so forth to troubleshoot sites and this year to do the maintenance itself. And so we're, in some ways, we've reverted to the, we've gone back to the future. We've reverted to the original model of SCAN where there was very little national support, but we had lots of good folks in the field who valued the data and did good work on our behalf, keeping things running. So props to him. Okay, data availability is kind of comes in 4 different forms, and I attached in the chat a PDF file that has everything hyperlinked. I don't think I'll run through a demo because those don't typically work well. We don't have great bandwidth here at the office in Salt Lake. Ironically, we have those challenges as well, and those haven't worked well when we've tried to do it. But I'll summarize these quickly, and you can follow up with that PDF document, and please hit me up with any questions you have. There are a lot of different, very different needs, and I'll break down these 4 options quickly, but please follow up with any questions. So each scan site has its own web page or website. Those are all hyperlinked for the sites listed. In that environment, it's kind of rigid because it's a government website, but you can get charts and very crude charts and tabular data. So that's one option. More broadly, the SCAN network shares both the server and telemetry network with SNOTEL, as I've mentioned a few times. We also share the interactive map with them. So they serve up all the snow data on an interactive map, but you can get all the SCAN data there as well, in addition to linking back to the individual SCAN websites. So if you like map-based navigation, this is a great option. Again, it's hyperlinked in that document. You can get both charts and tabular data. If you're looking for more information rather than data, we always say in NRCS we're data rich and information poor. Well, to stem that, or to try to move beyond that, we developed a relationship with Cornell University, and they developed a website that pulls in the ART data and gives you back information. So at the Conservation Decision Tools for SCAN website, you can pull in individual sites and develop a water fraction index. There's a crop drought index tool, bunch of different interesting tools. There's better wind data displays and so forth that we just couldn't do on our own servers. And there's a, let's see, livestock stress index and so forth. So a lot of interesting stuff to play around with. And then finally, if you're looking for big numbers, a lot of data itself, we also are the Water and Climate Center serves up SCAN data and SNOTEL data in the report generator environment, and that is that's the driest, I guess, of the options here. But you can create data files, basically like period of record hourly data files if you want for certain things. So it's pretty robust if that's what you're looking for, but it's not much fun to play with. So go ahead and hit me up with questions on those things. So lastly, our plans. I mentioned that we got all 8 sites up and running last year when we were there, which is great. We upgraded the telemetry, but we didn't get a chance to harden and replace the physical structures at the sites themselves, so that the enclosures are old and covered in lichen and algae and so forth. We have new stainless steel enclosures that are more waterproof. Humidity control around the electronics is critical, and we were going to take a massive step forward in that humidity control this year. We have already shipped 8 stainless steel, very tight electronics enclosures to the island, to Puerto Rico, and we're planning on deploying those. So that would be the next step. Getting the site working well was step 1. That was last year, and we're hoping to harden them further with these upgrades. As you know, that didn't happen. I haven't traveled for work since January, and because of climate in the name of the network, we got flagged early this year and haven't been able to purchase or travel basically since until next week. Next week is my first work travel trip that's been approved. So we've been crippled, frankly, this year, and it's too bad. Okay. When that window travel opens up, like I said, we will be able to install new sensors, the new more waterproof and robust stainless steel electronics enclosures, and we have a new tipping bucket design with a windshield that improves the accuracy, is particularly during windy rainstorms. So we're hoping to be able to do that soon. And again, we need to get our travel approved. Okay, that is what I had for my presentation. Happy to take questions now.
Hi, Kent. Thank you very much. I am back on. We want to remind folks that you can use the Q&A section to write your questions for Kent. But if not, if I don't see any at the moment, but I believe Dr. Gould has some that he wants to ask you, Kent.
Okay.
Sure. Really appreciate that. I love I appreciate all the work just to establish that and maintain it and keep that flow of data available to people. You mentioned well, maybe a couple of quick ones. I didn't see a link to the Cornell. It sounds like there's a Cornell site where there's some analysis and display of the data. Maybe we could put that in the chat somewhere if the team can gather that, or you could mention where that is again.
Sure. Yeah, it should have been in there.
Maybe it was in there and I missed it.
We'll make sure to reshare it. It was
Okay.
in the link shared, but we'll reshare it right now.
Well, a couple of things occurred to me in terms of what you're interested in doing with the data, what people have been doing with it in terms of research questions, both nationally and in Puerto Rico. Maybe Manuel, you've got some thoughts on that too. Are there some big questions that you see as opportunities to address with the data that either nobody has picked it up, or you need research or university partners maybe to team up with. I can see a lot of value in just looking at climate projections and models and seeing what the data, how the data aligns with some of those projections, and also working with individual crops and trying to get some validation about the soil climatology and the productivity and performance of individual crops. I don't know. It's a little bit general, but if you want to share anything about some ongoing ways the data is being used, or big questions that maybe aren't being addressed yet, that would be great to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I often have to apologize, and this would be one area where I feel like I should. When I was brought on 3 years ago, there were big promises made with respect to staff resources that never materialized. So without the, how do I say this? There were many sites down when I took over. 15–20% of the network was not of the sites were not reporting. And you can't build a house without a foundation. So I've put my personal goals and energy into getting that number down. So improve site latency and sensor latency and so forth. So that's taken up most of the resources. And unfortunately, haven't had the time to stick the landing, so to speak, or to work on the more fun and interesting part of the job, which is what you described. Personally, to finally answer your question, the current administration wants, of course, more farmer-facing activities. But I think one area where we could play a role is, and unfortunately it's not farmer-facing, but it does affect life and limb. The use of soil moisture data in flood forecasting, I think, is an area that needs to be tapped. And working with somebody from UMass Amherst who identified basically the difference in destruction between two different storms, and in a situation where one was well predicted and the other wasn't, and the difference in damage and intensity of the flood was entirely related to soil moisture, antecedent soil moisture. And he identified that using the scan data. And so I think there's a lot of value there because it's very simple. There's very little modeling involved. You're just reading basically the soil moisture data relative to saturation. And I came from snow survey to this position, so that's been my pet interest, as mentioned in the intro. Using soil moisture to improve stream forecast skill, and also in flood prediction. So that's an area for sure that personally I'd like to explore more. It doesn't align with our current priorities, unfortunately, but it is important nonetheless. Fire prediction is a hot topic, pun intended. Forest fire prediction, because soil moisture dries out, of course, before the fuel moisture does. So you can gain a few weeks predictive capacity, that time frame, if you can use soil moisture versus fuel moisture. So I think there's some neat opportunity there, and certainly that's applicable to to current issues we're having, and will continue to be as we move further into a weirding climate and different extremes, so forth.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Ken.
That's great. Just whoops, was I in? No, I'm not on mute.
No, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say again, I understand the need to focus on making sure that the data, has some continuity, integrity, long term, and all of the infrastructure to do that. super important. And great to hear of those. That just means, hey, there's opportunities there for a lot of research. And I know Manuel had his hand up, but that's a good role for teaming up with folks like Forest Service, ARS, Science, to see, if we can help address some of those issues and take advantage of some of the opportunities the data provides.
Mhm. Thank you.
Do you have any?
Yeah.
We have 3 questions, but we can address them after you share.
Yeah, may I say something quick, Noelle?
Yes, for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, to add in terms of the Caribbean area, the information it's been used across the years from the USDA Agriculture Research Service for their activities, especially because one of the stations the 2 of the stations are in their facilities in the Isabela Experiment Station and the Upper Bethlehem Experiment Station. So, and also for the monitoring of landslides, I know Dr. Hughes showed some interest to incorporate this information in their network, and we're still in the talks. Just wanted to mention that we, if everything kind of settle here in the future, but the intentions were to potentially add another site in an urban setting for urban agriculture in Puerto Rico in the San Juan area, and we were looking at sites at the botanical garden, and also we have interest to install another one in the Bordeaux area in St. Thomas. It's a very important agricultural and active agricultural area for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we have active projects there. So I just wanted to share that. And Noelle, I shared some like a fact sheet. It's not final, but it has the links for the stations for Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands that if they could be shared, that would be great. So
Yes.
I let other people, continue with the questions. Thank you.
I will go ahead and share that with but everyone in the chat real quick. But Manuel answered one of the questions in regards if there's more interest in having more stations here in PR. But one of the attendees also asked if private farm owners can be part of this and what is the process with that. And another attendee asked, when is the next scan upgrade? So if you could answer those 2 questions, Ken, and with that, we will close our Q&A section.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely are looking for private landowner partners. We have many sites located on private land. So really, ideally, these sites are farm or ranch adjacent. And one of the values of these that I didn't mention is that when you measure weather is, of course, changes across multi-scales. And most of our weather measurement, our information is at, well, here in Utah, we have a network that the TV stations use called WeatherBug, and they're all at elementary schools and so forth. And that's great for awareness and so forth. But what ends up happening is you're picking up a lot of urban heat island effects. And so sites, weather stations in town will be drier typically and warmer.
Estaciones climáticas en los pueblos es más seco, típicamente es más caliente. Y los valores de scan.
Yes, we have many on private land. In terms of adding capacity right now, we just don't know. It's a complete unknown. We haven't unfortunately, we went from no sites not reporting, so no sites down to 6 since January. So that the maintenance is an ongoing need. It's an active ongoing need, and we're losing ground, unfortunately. Every month we can't actually travel and fix things.
Understood, Kent. Thanks for taking the time to answer those questions. Maybe in 30 seconds, one last question came in of can this data collected be used to plan for sponge cities to reduce flooding, in parentheses, to mitigate flooding caused by extreme cement covered zones? I don't know if you're familiar with the concepts.
Well, is it impermeable surfaces? Is that?
I would think so.
Yeah. Yes, in that if as we pave and put buildings up and so forth, and we lose permeable surfaces, and we remove trees and so forth, the areas that absorb water and store water, even if it's quick, if it's a short storage, like a leaf, those become increasingly important. So if those areas are saturated prior to a storm, then yeah, we're in trouble. So I would say yes, it can help, because you know what you've got before the storm starts, and that's where the danger lies, and you can assess the danger there.
Understood. Well, with that, we thank you, Kent. Thanks for your time and sharing this valuable resource with us. Thank you to Manuel for being present and being able to share his knowledge as well on the SCAN network, and all the Korean Climate Hub staff. Thank you so much. And to our interpreters and translators, thank you for making this talk more accessible to different audiences. So without further ado, we hope you have a good afternoon. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes.